What's happening, fam? L.A.R. movement still moving. Book is entitled Lessons from a Non-Custodial Father at Amazon, Kindle, and CreateSpace. A link will be in the description box below as usual. This video is entitled Competence and Race. So what I'm about to get into is, what happens in life is, we looked at it racially, as far as intellectually, politically, monetary, financially. Competence and race always comes into play, like militaristically. Part of the, not Tuskegee experiment, but doggone it, Tuskegee Airmen was also part of that. So we come up in a society where America has a whitewashed view of America, but unfortunately, and they teach everybody a whitewashed view of America, not with the misunderstanding that people don't think like white people. People who aren't white don't think white. So because if you don't think white, you don't interact with the world in a white way, and what it happens is it's looked at as if you're incompetent because you're not mentally assimilated to how white people felt like they should run America, which is really they're running it in their in a way that's beneficial and best beneficial for them. So a lot of stuff that we were taught in school was not for our benefit. So instead of looking at it as a assimilation tool, a propaganda tool, kind of brainwashing tool, it was a double entendre. See, when you think about history, there's the history we learn of America, and that's the whitewashed version of it. And then there's the history of the people reading it who aren't white. So it's a double entendre. You might see George Washington, and as a heroic figure. We may see George Washington as Hitler. You get what I'm saying? So that's what I'm talking about. Like, same information, but viewed in completely different ways. And because it's viewed completely differently, it starts to create an animosity and an angst and a division and a disconnect because our points of views aren't compatible with American society. So what I mean by that, like, flip this around. When, like, as a black person, if we create something or start something, a lot of times it's hard for other groups of people to do them when we're doing them. They're years behind us when we do something or create something. So when we see somebody doing something, we're kind of looking at them chuckling like, that was 5-10 years ago. Like, what are you doing? Like, our culture has moved forward. And people think they're trying to fit into the culture when the culture has evolved. And they don't look competent to us when it comes to our experience in our culture, so they, in some ways, they're looked at as less intelligent, right? So, and when these people try to make our old culture American culture, we look at it differently. It's like, that ain't, that's why in some ways we view ourselves in a present sense, and America views us in a past sense, because when it comes to our race, people are incompetent. So I'm saying the same thing, it's just flipped around. The other thing, which is a political thing. This is why our political views sometimes are different, because there's a bit of incompetence or a view of incompetence. And I mean, this is in a global sense, because when you think about Africa, the Caribbean, America, Central and South America, normally, financially speaking, economically speaking, we are looked at as incompetent in these things, or we're not as we're not as we're just not as good as other people in these aspects. That's how we're viewed. We're not competent. We're incompetent. But a lot of the way we're viewed, a lot of the way people want us to operate economically in a financial sense is under the umbrella of how white people do it. So we're looked at as incompetent because we can't run our economies the way white people run their economies because we're not white people. You know what I'm saying? So when you look at other countries who are left to their own vices or have fought to be left to their own vices, they seem to be much more advanced and they seem to be much more competent because they actually built an economy and maintain an economy and grow an economy that is congruent, I want to say, with their culture, that goes actually with their culture, their values, their societies, their worldview of themselves also is married together. Ours is separate. You know what I'm saying? You know, our culture is this way and our economy is this way. So in some ways it's diametrically opposed. So we look incompetent because we have to eat. So we're trying to force two things together that don't really match, and they can only stay together long enough to eat and then buy. You know what I'm saying? They clash so much. So it's looked at as incompetence. You know, now when taught the basics, a lot of times we're really better off than other people. And what I mean by that is, that's why I was bringing up militaristically. A lot of people don't know how good in battle black soldiers were and are. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of people take credit for the things black soldiers do, whether they be in combat or to de-escalate having to get into combat. And, you know, that's part of what I was talking about with the Tuskegee Airmen. You know, prior to their massive success, it was said that, you know, oh, black people were too dumb to handle combat. Now, after the Tuskegee Airmen, you know, the numerous wars where black soldiers actually was on the front line, sometimes used for shields, sometimes just helping taking over things. People had a different look at us prowess-wise because part of our athletic prowess actually comes from our militaristic prowess. If y'all didn't, you know, if you can't never put the two and two together. So that's an issue, you know, because now when we got the basics, how to do things, and we do things our way, it works for us because it's just like having a team. Like, there's a base that says, you know, offense wins games, something like that, but defense wins championships. So that's a base thing, you know. The offense could pack the house and people will buy tickets, but the defense will win you the crown. So once you realize that, everybody does it in their own way. So, you know, maybe white people are a 4-3 defense in football. Maybe black people are a 3-4. Maybe Hispanics are a 4-6. You get what I'm saying? And people are like, wait, a 4-4, you know, 4-4-3, whatever. A weak side, a strong side. So there's a different type of way to do things. And when people do things based on their ideology, it gives other people issues because it's not coming from their paradigm, so they have to adjust themselves. And I think it's hard because us black people, we've been in America so long, we're more pliable than other people and less rigid, and we can be flexible and adjust, but you can only bend so much before you break, to be perfectly honest. But other groups aren't really competent because they can't think outside of their racial makeup. You know, this is part of the reason why empathy and being able to work in groups and with other people is such a big deal, because people was taught it's like a my way or the highway thing when it comes to competence and race. And you can't take that everywhere. That's why you know, when it comes to people traveling outside the country, that's why some people have created a bad reputation for themselves, and some people aren't welcome certain places, and some people get attacked when they go to certain places or get played or used because they brought their arrogant view of how the world is from their paradigm, and they went to other people's worlds and thought they were gonna change their world for them individually. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not gonna happen. It's kind of like if you grow up in a dysfunctional household, you go into a functional household, you want that functional household to be dysfunctional for you while you're there and then be functional when you leave. Not gonna happen. Not gonna happen. So when it comes to competence and race, it's like the same thing. And I think sometimes we don't address that, that we look at it differently. But to be able to exercise that, we do in some ways need to separate ourselves. So we out, man. Peace.